When we think of wars in the ancient world, we usually picture swords and shields, right? Battles for land, for power. But in first century Jerusalem, one of the biggest conflicts wasn't fought on a battlefield at all. It was fought in a courtroom. And this legal war, which shook an entire empire, was all about a single forbidden name.
So you gotta ask yourself, how in the world does that happen? How can just a name, a simple collection of sounds, ignite a legal firestorm so intense that it's threatening to bring down the entire religious establishment, especially in a place as volatile as ancient Jerusalem?
All right, let's set the scene. Picture first century Jerusalem. This city is a powder keg just waiting for a spark. At the very center of power, you have the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court of religious law, and they are in a full-blown panic. Why? Well, because a single name is causing miracles to pop up all over the city, and it's fueling what they see as a dangerous insurgency that could unravel everything they've built.
Yeah, see, to the Sanhedrin, the apostles weren't just some wandering preachers. No way. They were viewed as legal insurgents. In their eyes, every single time the apostles spoke this forbidden name, they weren't just sharing a belief. They were committing a serious, high-level spiritual crime.
So what was the actual weapon in this whole legal battle? It was the name itself. That's it. To the prosecution, this name wasn't just a word. It was the source of all the power, all the chaos. So let's dive in and really break down why it was considered so incredibly potent. See, in ancient Hebrew culture, a name wasn't just what your parents called you. It was your identity, your authority, your power, all rolled into one. The name Jesus comes from the Hebrew Yeshua. And what does that mean? It means Yahweh is salvation. I mean, just think about that for a second. Every time the apostles said that name, they were making a massive theological claim that flew right in the face of the temple authorities.
So when the apostles used this name, they believed they were tapping into a higher power. It's kind of like a diplomat from a small nation walking into the UN and speaking with the full backing of a global superpower. That's how they saw it. They believed they were invoking the authority of God himself. It was an absolutely astonishing claim.
And this authority wasn't just some abstract concept. They claimed it had very real, very public results. They demonstrated power in 3 specific areas. They claimed authority over sickness, authority over what they called spiritual darkness, and, this is the big one, authority for salvation. These public miracles became the evidence, right? The legal exhibits A, B, and C that the court simply could not ignore.
So, faced with this undeniable power, the Sanhedrin is backed into a corner. They can't really deny the miracles are happening, so what do? They attack the messengers. They launch this desperate 4-part legal strategy to silence the apostles and get this name banned from public use for good. So here's their legal playbook. It's a 4-step assault. First, they try to hit them with a sorcery charge, something called strange fire. When that doesn't work, they issue a legal injunction, a gag order. Then, things escalate, and they have to defend themselves against accusations of blood guilt, and this all leads to a final, game-changing moment called the Gamaliel Proviso. Okay, tactic number 1. It's a classic legal trap. They ask them, by what power or by what name have you done this? Now, that sounds like a simple question, right? But it's not. Under their own laws, they had to investigate any claim of a miracle. Their goal here was to discredit these miracles, to legally rebrand them as illegal sorcery, all because they were happening outside the official temple system. Well, when that first tactic didn't work, you have a man who was famously lame from birth now literally walking and leaping. It's kind of hard to deny the evidence. So they pivot. Tactic 2 is all about procedure. They issue an official injunction. You can think of it like a modern-day gag order or a cease and desist. So the next time the apostles get arrested, the charge isn't about the miracle anymore. Nope, it's for contempt of court. Clever, huh? Now we get to tactic 3, and this one is driven by pure fear. Self-preservation. When they shout, "You intend to bring this man's blood on us," that tells you everything. The apostles' preaching wasn't just a sermon at this point. It was a public indictment. They were essentially accusing the highest court in the land of wrongful death, of executing an innocent man. But let's be real, all these legal tactics, they're just what's on the surface. What was the real threat here? What was the deep-seated fear that was driving this whole relentless prosecution? Okay, let's peel back the layers and get to the true motive. When you boil it all down, this was a clash between 2 completely different systems of power. On one hand, you had the Pharisee system,
complex rules, a strict hierarchy, public rituals, all things they controlled. But this new Jesus model was offering something revolutionary: direct access to God, backed up by miraculous proof. It completely bypassed their entire system and threatened to make them obsolete.
And here's the motive that must have kept them up at night. Every single miracle performed in that name wasn't just a healing. It was living, breathing proof that the man they had put on a cross and executed was in fact alive. And not just alive, but incredibly powerful. This wasn't just a theological problem for them anymore. It was an existential threat.
So things in the courtroom are at a breaking point. It's deadlocked, people are enraged, it's right on the edge of getting violent. And it's at that moment that a highly respected doctor of the law, a man named Gamaliel, steps forward. And he offers a piece of legal wisdom that changes the whole game: the Gamaliel Proviso.
What Gamaliel says is it's a stroke of genius. He basically tells everyone to take a breath. He proposes a simple test. He says, look, if this whole movement is just a human thing, it's going to fizzle out on its own. But, and this is the kicker, if it is from God, you cannot stop it. And you might just find yourselves fighting against God himself. It was the one argument they had no answer for.
So, what was the final verdict? Well, the verdict of history is pretty clear. The Sanhedrin's legal case was a total failure. The name they tried to bury, the name they tried to outlaw with legal threats, it didn't just survive. It exploded out of Jerusalem and is now spoken in almost every language on the planet. And all of that leaves us with one final big question to think about. This entire intense conflict was all about the power that people believed was in a single name. It kind of makes you wonder, stepping back from this specific story, what is it that gives any name, whether it's a person, a company, or an idea, its real lasting power?
Thanks for watching. Visit our website, www.christthelivingtruth.com, to learn more.